Alright, so this here is an example I've written out that we'll use to go into a little bit more detail about what I mean between the difference of using a for loop to look at the collection itself versus looking at the indexes of the collection using range len of the collection. So basically, let's say you have a list of nums, right? And in our list of numbers, we want to make the biggest number multiplied by 10 and modify that in the list nums. So we have 10, 5, 4, 8, 12, and 6, and we want to make the biggest number multiplied by 10 and changed. So the biggest number, if you've looked through and identified, it is 12. And 12 times 10 is 120. So at the end of this, 10, 5, 4, 8, 120, 6 is what we'd want the collection to be. So 10, 5, yeah, 10, oh man, my handwriting is not it today. 10, 5, 4, 8, 126, right? So that's the goal of this code. So what I've written out is the idea. We have the biggest val index, and that is going to be equal to 0. And then we have for I in range len of list nums. So range len of list nums, right? What's that? So len list nums first is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So range of 6 is saying, okay, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's what it is. It's saying the list of 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So yeah, I'll just write that down. So that's what this is saying. And then we're saying, okay, for each of these, if the list nums at position of 0 or 1 or 2, whatever, is greater than the list nums at the biggest val index, then the biggest val index gets changed to that new index, because this is now the bigger index number, right? Bigger index, or bigger number with that respective index. So we're going to change the biggest val index to that. So yeah, the thing about if we didn't use this, if we just did for I in list nums, right? For I in list nums, that's going through, 10, 5, 4, 8, 12, 6 themselves, right? It's going through the numbers themselves. If we were to print I, it would print in 5, 4, 8, 12, 6. And we could get the biggest val. We could certainly do that. Like we can create like a biggest val variable and then get 12. But then we couldn't take that 12 and modify it back in the list. We couldn't do that. We would need the index of where 12 was in the list to do that. So, I mean, actually, there's probably still a way we could do that, but it would just be unnecessarily extra code when you could just do it this way. So, anyways, yeah, this is like the advantage that comes with for like the index way of doing for loops is that you can go back and you can modify the list or whatever you're iterating through to be changed. And yeah, so in this case, as I said, it's going, I guess we'll run through the code again. We have list nums, 10, 5, 4, 8, 12, 6 is the list of nums. We have biggest val index, which is the index for whichever index is the biggest num. And we start at 0 by default, just as a default like starting point. And then we look at the list for I in range len list nums, and that's going to look at the indexes of each of the numbers in the list. And if the number at the index is greater than the number at the biggest val index currently, then the biggest val index gets changed. So after we find the biggest val, after doing this for loop, we'll find it, the biggest val index, and then we're going to set the list nums at the position of the biggest val equal to that number itself times 10. So that's what's happening, that we wanted to like modify the biggest number by 10. So yeah, what was I gonna say? I was gonna say one more thing. There is one part of this code that we could make it a little bit more efficient, right? And that would be here for I in range len of list nums. So we're starting at 0 and we're going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But at the moment, the biggest val index is already equal to 0. So it would just be comparing at the first start of the loop, right? It's going to compare list nums at 0 to list nums at biggest val index, which is 0. So it's going to be comparing itself to itself. So there's not really any point of doing that. So what we want to do is we want to compare starting at 1. 0 to 1, and then 0 to 2 and 3, you know? So to do that, we would need to modify this portion slightly with like basically like 2 or 3 character changes. So you would say for I in range 1 to indicate, yeah, I'm starting at 1. And then len list nums to indicate, yeah, I'm ending at the length of list nums minus 1 is the last one I'm ending at. So yeah, it's going from 1, which is 5, all the way to 6. 5 to 6, that's funny. Coincidence, right? But yeah, it's going to go from 1 5, 4, 8, 12, 6, position 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in the index. And it's not going to even look at 0 in this for loop. It's going to compare. It's because it's already, as we said, right, it's already, this biggest val index is already at index 0. So yeah, that's doing list nums at 1 greater than list nums at 0, and then list nums at 2 greater than list nums at still 0, right? And then list nums at 3 greater than list nums at 0 still, and then list nums at 4, which is 12, is greater than list nums at 0, which is 10, right? 12 is greater than 10, so then the biggest val index gets changed to 4. And then it goes back to the for loop again, and then biggest val index, list nums at 5 gets compared to list nums at the biggest val index, which is 4. So 12 is 6 greater than 12? Nope. And that's where our index ends at 4. So list nums at 4 equals list nums at 4 times 10. So yeah, 12 times 10, right? So if you were to print list nums, you would get 10, 5, 4, 8, 126. That would be the list. So hopefully this all made sense. And if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments.